All right, Krystal, what's on your radar?
Well, last week, protesters stormed the Michigan state capitol to protest that state's lockdown. Drawing particular ire was Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer, whose aggressive lockdown stance triggered a particularly virulent backlash. Now, I am always pretty reluctant to draw any broad conclusions over any particular group of activists or protesters because, as you know, media is certain to elevate the most obnoxious, offensive, or stupid members of the group in order to dismiss the entirety of the exercise. But let's just say this group of folks didn't particularly put their best foot forward. The rally included the presence of an anti-government militia ostentatiously brandishing weapons. A video went viral of two white children doing a dance routine while one of them donned a cartoonishly racist Obama mask. Protesters chanted "Lock her up" and "Heil Whitmer," and some carried Confederate flags, typical fringe anti-government reactionary crap. Their goals are, in my opinion, not only wrong, but stupid. The notion of just opening back up and getting back to normal is a dangerous fantasy. There is no back to normal until this pandemic is past. We are already approaching 70,000 dead Americans, more than were lost in all of Vietnam, and the toll continues to climb. And by the way, there are also plenty of indications that that number is actually a dramatic undercount of how many have actually perished. So to put it bluntly, people don't want to die. They do not want to risk infecting vulnerable loved ones, even if they believe themselves to be invulnerable. The public data available shows large majorities of Americans much more concerned about reopening too early than in staying closed. Work actions are cropping up across the country as frontline essential workers demand some level of basic safety in performing their work functions. A lot of attention, though, has been paid to the tactics of the protesters themselves, the willingness to mass gather without social distancing and, in many cases, without even wearing masks. No doubt, such an activity during these times is dangerous. But actually, that's precisely the point. And given the dire and absolute stakes of the times we're living through, I don't actually think that those tactics themselves should be taken off the table. In other words, while I think the goals of these particular protesters are bonkers, I do actually believe that the shocking level of corporate fealty and destruction of the working class going on right now merits contemplating exactly such a radical approach. Just think about it. As of today, those of us who believe in antitrust and worker power in any sort of populist economics have been completely crushed. There's just no other way around it. At the very beginning of this crisis, the always well-moneyed, connected, and organized forces of big business leapt into action, while small business owners are in many cases still waiting to get their PPP with all its attendant red tape and inefficiencies. Big business, of course, got custom-written legislation, concierge loans, bespoke tax cuts that they'd been pushing for years and were now able to cram through with the new crisis opportunity. Cosseted from the Great Depression-like conditions, all the big players will not only come out on the other side just fine, but they can take advantage of the opportunity presented to gobble up plenty of small, medium, and even largest companies in a massive wave of mergers and acquisitions. We are just now getting some new numbers about exactly how crushing this wave of small business destruction will be. According to a poll by the Chamber of Commerce, 40% of America's 30 million small businesses could close permanently in the next 6 months. 40%. Now, I bet some of you watching right now are facing exactly that. Your little store or your service or your restaurant, whatever it was that you built up with your dreams and your sweat, putting your entire soul into it, believing in that American dream, making a little space for yourself, utterly decimated. Filing for PPP, watching as all the cash flows out the door first to the big guys, watching Congress twiddle their thumbs at home, watching the media care more about some interoffice drama between Fauci and Trump or whatever than your entire livelihood and way of life being destroyed by your own government. This situation isn't only a disaster for the business owners, but also for the workers and for the communities that are going to lose much of their remaining local vitality. Workers forced to choose among a few monopolies are going to get nothing but crushed. And of course, we've covered extensively here the way essential workers are treated as completely disposable. At the meat processing plants, delivering your packages, bagging your groceries, washing the floors, politicians are happy to give them a pat on the head, call them heroes, but they won't do a damn thing to protect them or compensate them for risking their lives to keep this society running. The two-tier economy, the brutal inhumanity of our system, the unconscionable inequality, the blood-sucking monopolies, all of that has just been accelerated at a rate I honestly don't think we can even imagine. I don't know what it looks like for 40% of our small businesses to go under all at once. But I know on the other side is a dystopian nightmare for workers, for small towns, and for small cities. So no, I'm not going to condemn the tactics of these protesters. They are weaponizing safety in the same way, frankly, that establishment Dems and Republicans did when they pushed forward with primary elections in order to maintain their own political power, or, as Mitch McConnell is, by calling the Senate back into session in order to continue pushing new judges through. They're taking hostages like how the corporatists were able to get their $4 trillion by taking workers and small businesses hostage. And on the left, well, there's real stakes involved in the burgeoning workers' movement. If you compromise the daily luxuries and on-demand living of the coddled PMC, you will get their attention pretty quick. But why should we see the territory of the exact sort of radical action like that being taken in this crisis by the fringe right, mainstream right, and mainstream Dems? You'll note every one of those groups is so far having more success in accomplishing their aims and objectives than the populist left. While we're hosting another virtual roundtable about Medicare for All and writing a carefully worded op-ed, they are willing to threaten, take hostages, and put their own health on the line. There's a reason that we're having much more of a debate right now about when and how to open versus when and how the government will guarantee our basic rights. And the results speak for themselves. Sagar, those numbers around small businesses are shocking. 40%. I mean, America does not look the same on the other side of this at all.
I mean, this is what we warned about from the very beginning. And all of it actually stems down to Congress's decision to cap the PPP loans. Because if they had done an uncapped program, then we wouldn't be in the situation that we are right now. Everybody would have gotten the loans. Everybody would have continued to make payroll. And even now, we still have the opportunity to do that. Senate's coming back literally today. We could still do it. I'm not going to hold my breath and say that it's going to happen. But what you're seeing, it's a disaster because these businesses at the same time, a lot of them weren't able to get the PPP loan. And even some who don't necessarily want to play the role of paying out payroll to their workers. So they're just firing their workers, letting them go on unemployment, and then trying to lobby the Federal Reserve for excess cash. And what does that give them? It gives them the ability in order to clean house and then just bring back whomever they want. It was the same thing that happened during the Great Recession.
Yes.
Is that ultimately most of the jobs didn't come back. They came back in a very differentiated form than when they were lost in 2008. That is the real disaster in my view, because what you're seeing is, and one of the ebbs and flows, the business cycle and all that, they're like, oh, competition, creative destruction, that's a good thing. But in a general collapse like the one we're in like today, Bloomberg analyst Joe Weisenthal pointed out today that in a general collapse, bigger guys are the only ones who survive. And that is the actual disaster here because, as you said, 43% of American small businesses close. That means a $2 trillion Amazon corporation. That means a $2 trillion Walmart corporation. That means a complete nationalized supply chain beholden to China, completely devoid of any communities. I mean, you see dollar stores and all these other communities, right? Are these stores that just suck money out of these distressed communities and send it to corporate wherever that they're headquartered. That's the future of America. That's a dystopian place. There's no interconnectivity within a community. That's just gone. It's just all the money is going to flow to New York, LA, San Francisco. Everybody there is going to continue to get way richer, and everybody in the middle is just going to get wiped out.
I mean, some of you all know this, and I've written about it before. I mean, a big part of my politics was living in the industrial Midwest in one of these towns that had just been decimated first by, it was the pottery capital of the world, dishes and plates, this stuff like this was all made there. That all went overseas, 50s, 60s to China, right? Then there was a steel mill in the next town over, good middle class jobs, and then that all went away. And now you go to that town and look, I mean, this is not a statement on the people there who are wonderful and lovely. I loved living there, but the town itself is so decimated and it's so heartbreaking. Of course, you've had massive opioid addiction. Of course, you've had all of those problems you would expect. And the thing that crushed me was you go up and down the Ohio River and it's one town after another after another. That's exactly the same. And so when you look at that and you see all of these small businesses 40% in 6 months saying they could close permanently, that means all of America looking like that with a few small exceptions, a few metropolises, giant urban centers that are fine. And even within those, you ask the working class how they're doing there, and they're still getting crushed because now they only have monopolies that they can deal with, who can treat them however they want, treat them as disposable, just like right now. 900 workers at a meat processing plant getting coronavirus because their company doesn't care to keep them safe, doesn't care to spend the money on PPE or social distancing, which would slow down productivity, doesn't care. Treated as disposable. Their lives treated as less than, getting enough pork on the shelves in time and making sure that their bottom line stays where they want it to. That is what the future looks like. And so, I think that people need to wrap their heads around it and keep any and all tactics that make sense, that are ethical, in mind. Because I'll tell you, the mainstream Democrats and Republicans here, they took workers and small businesses hostage at the beginning. That's why it was all tied together.
Right.
So that you could say, we're going to give the only way you're even going to get these crumbs for workers and small businesses is if you give us our $4 trillion for big business. And they were organized and they got it done right away. These mainstream Dems and Republicans who pushed for these primary elections to go forward, they didn't care about people's health. And these protesters, obnoxious and radical and fringe as they are, they don't care about their health and safety. They are going to go out there and get what they want. And it's been the populists who have been, we'll get it next time. This time we're really on this next phase 15. That's when we're really going to get the good stuff. Give me a break. You wouldn't withhold your vote on the giant corporate bailout. You didn't withhold your vote when they passed paid sick leave and gave this giant loophole to big business. You didn't withhold your vote on the small business where we got, very little in terms of it still wasn't a sufficient amount in terms of small business. Am I really going to believe that you're going to play hardball this time? By the way, Mitch McConnell doesn't even want to pass another anything. So what leverage do you have? There's been hardball played with all the corporate interests. Everybody who's aligned with the corporate interests have played hardball, and the populists have been like, we're going to write an op-ed. We're going to hold a virtual town hall.
And these things do nothing. And nobody's come out of this as a hero. Nobody really has done anything about it. And that's the most distressing part. And look, these people, they seem angry. A lot of people are upset with their tactics. But one of the mentions that we always talk about here, you cannot demonize people who are in dire straits. You cannot, I saw people on Twitter being like, these people are so dumb, all this. You cannot call people dumb whose livelihoods are on the lines. Yes, are the tactics misguided? Sure, in some cases. Should we be yelling at cops in their face? Probably not. But at the end of the day, if you're losing your business, I understand your plight, and I have much more sympathy for you than a bunch of blue check keyboard warriors who are calling you stupid. Because ultimately, the government failed one group, right? They failed that group. They didn't fail the professional managerial class who are all sitting at home, drinking coffee, waking up and everybody's joking about putting on sweatpants and what time of the day. Other people can't pay their bills, okay? And I have much more sympathy for them than I ever will for the other side.
There are a lot of people that are hurting. And my whole point is just rage. Rage is an appropriate emotion.
Yeah, it is.
Rage is a completely justified emotion right now. Do with that what you will. Next on Rising, Iowa 4th Congressional District candidate J.D. Scholten describes how coronavirus has impacted workers at meat processing plants, something, of course, that we have been covering here. They've had a tremendous, horrible outbreak there. That conversation when Rising continues.